Have you noticed something strange happening in gaming lately? In a world dominated by ultra-powerful consoles, cloud gaming, and graphics that look almost indistinguishable from real life, millions of gamers across the United States are suddenly going backwards. People are lining up to buy consoles that are 20, sometimes 40 years old. Cartridge-based systems that most people thought were dead are selling out. Old PlayStation discs are skyrocketing in value, and entire communities of gamers are rebuilding childhood setups in their living rooms. So what's going on? Why are retro gaming consoles exploding in popularity in 2026, especially here in the United States? And more importantly, if you're a gamer, a collector, or even someone who just grew up with Nintendo, Sega, or early PlayStation, which retro consoles are actually worth owning today? Because some of them are becoming cultural icons again, while others are quietly disappearing forever. Today on Tech Vibes, we're diving deep into the best retro gaming consoles in 2026, why Americans are obsessed with them again, which ones are dominating the retro scene, and why the retro gaming wave might just reshape how we think about gaming's future. And trust me, a few of these consoles might surprise you, because the retro gaming boom happening right now didn't appear out of nowhere. Across the United States, something interesting has been happening over the past few years. While modern gaming has gotten bigger, more expensive, and more complex, many players have started craving something simpler. Modern games can cost $70 or more. They require massive downloads, constant updates, and sometimes even subscriptions just to play online. Retro gaming is the exact opposite. You plug in the console, insert the cartridge, and you're playing within seconds. No patches, no microtransactions, no complicated menus, just pure gameplay. And in the US, that simplicity has become incredibly appealing. But nostalgia is only part of the story. There's also a cultural shift happening among American gamers. Many people who grew up in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s now have something they didn't have back then: money. They're adults now, they have careers, they have disposable income, and instead of chasing the newest console, they're rebuilding the gaming experiences they remember from childhood. This is why retro game stores are popping up again across the country, why online marketplaces are full of collectors hunting down old cartridges, and why certain consoles that once sold for $20 at garage sales are now worth hundreds. But here's where it gets interesting. Not every retro console is worth revisiting. Some aged beautifully, others not so much. So let's talk about the consoles that are truly defining retro gaming in 2026. And the first one might be the most legendary of them all: the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The SNES is widely considered one of the greatest consoles ever made. Released in the early 1990s, this system introduced players to some of the most influential games in history: Super Mario World, The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, Super Metroid, Donkey Kong Country. These games didn't just define a console generation, they shaped modern game design. And here's the incredible part: they're still fun today. The pixel art holds up beautifully, the gameplay is tight, the music is iconic. In fact, many game developers in the United States still study SNES-era games when designing modern indie titles. That's why the SNES remains one of the most collected retro consoles in America today. But Nintendo wasn't the only company dominating the retro scene, because if you were a kid in the 90s, there's a good chance you remember the legendary rivalry: Nintendo versus Sega. And Sega's most iconic system, the Sega Genesis, is another retro powerhouse in 2026. The Genesis had attitude. It marketed itself as the cooler, edgier alternative to Nintendo. This was the console that gave us Sonic the Hedgehog, Streets of Rage, Golden Axe, Mortal Kombat with full blood effects. In the United States, the Genesis created an entirely different gaming culture. It was faster, louder, and more arcade-inspired. And in 2026, that identity still resonates. Retro gamers love the Genesis for its unique sound chip, its arcade-style action, and its massive library of classic titles. But the real magic of retro gaming might come from a console that changed everything: the original PlayStation. When Sony entered the gaming industry in the mid-1990s, many people didn't take it seriously. Sony wasn't known for video games, but the PlayStation didn't just compete with Nintendo and Sega. It completely reshaped gaming. This was the moment gaming moved into the 3D era. Suddenly, games weren't just side-scrolling adventures. They were full 3D worlds. Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy VII, Resident Evil, Gran Turismo. For many American gamers, the PlayStation was their first experience with cinematic storytelling in games. It felt grown up, more mature, more ambitious. And today, the original PlayStation is one of the most collected retro consoles in the United States. But here's where things get even more interesting. Because one of the most loved retro consoles today wasn't even considered a retro system when it launched. The Nintendo GameCube. When the GameCube first released in 2001, it faced fierce competition. The PlayStation 2 was dominating the market. Microsoft had just launched the original Xbox, and the GameCube looked different. It was small, purple, and it used tiny discs instead of standard DVDs. At the time, some people underestimated it, but years later, gamers realized something important. The GameCube had one of the best game libraries ever created: Super Smash Bros. Melee, Metroid Prime, The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker, Mario Kart Double Dash, Resident Evil 4. Today, GameCube games are some of the most expensive collectibles in retro gaming, and the console itself has become a symbol of early 2000s nostalgia for American gamers. But here's the part nobody talks about. Retro gaming in 2026 isn't just about nostalgia. It's also about preservation. Many classic games are disappearing. Physical cartridges are aging. Disc-based games can degrade. And some titles were never re-released digitally. That means the only way to experience them is through original hardware. Collectors, preservation groups, and retro enthusiasts across the United States are now racing to save these pieces of gaming history. But retro gaming also has another side, and this is where things get serious. The retro market has become incredibly expensive. Some rare games now sell for thousands of dollars. Even common retro consoles have seen their prices climb dramatically over the past few years. This has created a debate in the gaming community. On one side, collectors believe retro gaming is preserving cultural history. On the other side, some gamers worry that rising prices are locking people out of these experiences. But despite the controversy, retro gaming continues to grow, and new technologies are helping keep these consoles alive. HD adapters now allow classic consoles to connect to modern TVs. Replacement parts are being manufactured again, and entire online communities are dedicated to repairing and restoring old hardware. In many ways, retro gaming has become its own industry. Now let's talk about the real question. What are the actual benefits and drawbacks of retro gaming today? The benefits are obvious. Retro games are focused on gameplay rather than graphics. They're often easier to pick up and play, and they offer a unique sense of gaming history that modern titles simply can't replicate. But there are downsides too. Old hardware can fail, controllers wear out, and finding authentic games can be expensive. There's also the issue of accessibility. Not everyone has the space or budget to collect physical consoles and cartridges. That's why some gamers turn to modern re-releases or emulation. But many enthusiasts argue that nothing truly replaces the experience of playing on the original hardware. The click of a cartridge, the startup screen, the feeling of holding the original controller. For many people in the United States, that experience is part of gaming culture itself. So what does the future of retro gaming look like? Surprisingly, it might be even bigger than today. Experts believe retro gaming will continue growing throughout the next decade. By 2030, the retro market could become a major segment of the gaming industry. More companies are already exploring retro-inspired hardware. Modern consoles now include classic game libraries, and new indie games are deliberately designed with retro aesthetics, pixel art, chiptune music, simple gameplay loops. In other words, the influence of retro gaming isn't fading, it's evolving. And the consoles that started it all are becoming cultural artifacts, gaming history that shaped generations of players. So if you're wondering whether retro gaming is worth exploring in 2026, here's some practical advice. If you're a student, retro games are one of the best ways to understand how game design evolved. Many modern mechanics started in these early titles. If you're a working professional, retro gaming can actually be a relaxing alternative to massive modern games that demand dozens of hours. Sometimes a quick 20-minute session of a classic platformer is exactly what you need. And if you're a collector or entrepreneur, the retro market continues to grow in the United States. Vintage games, consoles, and accessories are becoming valuable pieces of tech history. But most importantly, retro gaming reminds us of something simple. Great games don't need ultra-realistic graphics. They need great ideas. And that's a lesson the entire gaming industry continues to learn. Because sometimes, the future of gaming is hiding inside the past. And maybe the real question isn't why retro gaming is coming back. Maybe it never truly left. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the best retro gaming consoles in 2026, make sure to subscribe to Tech Vibes for more videos exploring the technology shaping our world and the tech that started it all. And now I want to hear from you. What was the first console you ever played? Was it Nintendo, Sega, PlayStation, or something even older? Drop your answer in the comments below, because some of those memories might just be the beginning of someone else's retro gaming journey. And until the next video, stay curious, stay nostalgic, and keep riding the tech vibes.